Alright guys, today we have a very special guest, Dr. Loretta Chen. Overall, an amazing woman. Story just blows my mind. She's right now the consultant for the Kingdom of Bhutan. I repeat again, it's the Kingdom of Bhutan. She's also a media entrepreneur. She's done many theatre shows. Some of them, just the name of it is The Vagina Monologues. And on top of that, she's just super highly educated, a master PhD. She has crazy life stories. Just something you will read in a storybook, which is why probably she wrote this book. Nonetheless, it's all true. I don't spoil it for you. I mean, there's suicide in there, some things that couldn't even be put on the book. There is her losing an entire company, and we'll check it out. Without further ado, alright guys, before I go, the interview though is the lights went out, we're surrounded in darkness, no electricity at all, and just really hard to catch Loretta. Tried our best. I would love to shoot it again, but I think we did pretty well. Interviewing, this is my second interview. I've never done this before. I hope you guys forgive me. If there's any room for improvement, just in the comments below. Oh, and also, for those of you who can't look at this thing for too long, I understand. I created a podcast channel just for you. It's in the link below. In podcast called Misfits. Perfect! Thank you.
Thank you! Thank you so much for having me.
I spent the last few days reading the book and devour it. Such an easy read with...
A few days, most people read it in 3 hours.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not a really fast reader. So maybe let's just start with the book. Okay. So the book, Woman on Top,
Yes.
The Art of Smashing Stereotype and Breaking All the Rules.
That's right.
Yeah, tell me why writing a book is not easy. I mean, you spend like a few months at least. At least.
Well, okay, to be fair, okay, there are two questions there. So first, why the book? I don't know if you can see the cover of the book.
Yes.
But back then, who was making news was Miley Cyrus. So that's me with a take of like Miley Cyrus on a wrecking ball. Okay. That's kind of like how I've always lived my life. So it's me on a wrecking ball. Except I wasn't on a wrecking ball. I was on like a little rod with a little metal bar. So it's like...
Was it, how was it shot?
So I was on a rod with a metal bar. And so my designer put this little globe and this little wrecking ball, but it was a freaking painful wedgie, right? But
oh my God. So funny.
Yeah. Okay, why I wrote the book? I wrote it for girls, men. I wrote it for anybody that needed inspiration. I wrote it for anybody that has gone through rough times in their life and felt that they needed to know that life will be okay.
Can you place us at a time when you wrote the book, where you are at, what you were doing?
So I think 38. So it was about 2 years ago. So I was probably 37, 38. I had my epiphany about where I was headed at 36. Like I was in the Himalayan mountains. I spent a lot of time in the Himalayas because I consult for the government of Bhutan, specifically the government investment arm of Bhutan, which is like the Temasek Holdings equivalent. It's called Druk Holdings and Investments. And so I go there like 2-3 times a year. And on one of my trips up to the Himalayas on my own, I suddenly realized that we're so small. I was so humbled by the Himalayas, and I was completely at peace with myself, recognizing that I'm completely alone on the mountain.
You're alone?
Yes, of course, I go alone.
Okay.
Right?
No guide.
There's a guide, but then they normally give you space, and you know, they would take you there, and then they sort of scoot off, right, and give you your space. And I spent so much time there. So one thing is that I begin to you be so comfortable in your own skin, and I think that the irony is that the minute you realize you're completely able to be completely by yourself is when I realized I was ready to be with someone else. And so when I wrote the book, I was 36, and I thought that the next chapter of my life was to actually get married and be with someone else, which at that point in time I hadn't met yet.
Oh, okay.
But I saw it in my future, and then I met him when I was 39. Because I knew I was going to get married by the time I was 40. Right. But to put it in context with what you just said, I decided there and then that I was at a place in my life where I was completely happy and very blissful, and I wanted to reflect back on my life when I was in my 20s, where I went through something really difficult, where I witnessed 2 suicides, the suicide of my girlfriend then, my first love, and she committed suicide. Yeah, so, but I knew that when I was 24, when that happened to me, I told myself that one day when I got better, I wanted to be able to share what I'd gone through, the depression, the anxiety, the pain, the grief, the mourning, and how you get over something so devastating, and how you draw strength from that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when you go through a crisis, you can either crash and burn and become very cynical about life and love and everything else.
We have a few examples of people who are like that.
Right? Or you rise like a phoenix, and you want to make every adversity in your life be worth something for someone else. And that was something that I told myself I will do when I was going through my crisis. I said, if I got through this, I'm going to be able to share whatever I've gone through, the life lessons I've learned with people. And at 36, I felt it was the right time. And at 24, I thought that was the only big thing I would go through. But by the time I was 36, there was like a lot other stuff that I went through as well, which I put in the book.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the other people. It was about what I took away from that, and how I drew strength from that, and how this would make me go through the rest of my life so much more stronger. And that really is why I wrote the book.
Yeah, I mean, you... All right, so lights goes out.
I told you my life is dramatic. What did I say? You know, that's exactly what I said.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much
to the
for
Blackout Show. It's gonna change name today.
That's right. Right. And I really wanted to write that because I remember when I was 24 and so depressed, I had gone through my girlfriend then had committed suicide, and then, I had witnessed 2 suicides back to back.
Yes.
You got to buy the book to know more.
Yes, please.
You know what? I actually been to Davis in Sacramento.
Oh, that's so funny.
And I lived there for a while.
That's hilarious.
So I was like, whoa, I actually been
You
there.
actually been there,
Yeah.
yes. At 24, when that happened to me, I thought that, okay, I wanted to put that down. And when I was looking for a book to read, there were no books. There were either books written by North American people, there were books written by people of other cultures, and largely not Asian women living in Asia. There were Asian American women, but they're not Asian women. And not to say that then I didn't take any value from it, but it was rather different. I mean, our societal contexts were different, our social norms were different, because then I was dating women who committed suicide. How I was regarded in Singapore would be really different from how I was regarded in the US.
For sure.
And all this was stuff that I knew that I wanted to be able to put down for somebody who ever felt marginalized. It didn't matter if you didn't date a woman, that wasn't a point, but for anybody that's ever felt marginalized at any point in their lives and felt out of place, they didn't really fit into society, there wasn't really any book to read. Because I feel like in Asia, people like to talk about, I'm so this and I'm so this and I'm so powerful and I'm so rich, right?
But you don't get any lessons out of those things, right?
I mean, you do learn that, okay, you got to, a person that I spoke to, her name is Jenny Chua, who used to run the Raffles Hotel. I love that woman. She's kind of like my mummy. But she always said, once you've made it, you'll always have a rags to riches story. And that's very sexy when you look back, right? And a lot of these people like to tell the rags to riches story, but it's never from, it's not to say it's not important, but it's never from some serious dilemma that they face. I mean, it's always like, okay, I was very poor, then I worked my way up. It's very much financially driven. Not to say that's not important. I think it's very important as well for us to have those lessons. But for Asians, we won't talk about the fact that, we had a suicide in my family, or had a homosexual son, or I struggled to hide my cross-dressing habit. Like, Asian people, we don't like to talk about these taboos because we feel like we'll be judged. And that's exactly what I wanted to give confidence to people who've ever felt that I don't dare to be who I am. I don't have the confidence to say what is it that I really want or what I really think. There wasn't a book like that out there. And I wanted to write that for anybody that's ever felt that way. And I realized a lot of people that felt that way.
I bet, yeah. I mean, right now, of course, we have things like the Pink Dot.
Right.
who is like
Right.
tremendous.
That's right.
in
Yeah,
terms of,
social
like-
media, because back in the day, I didn't have social media.
Yes.
So books were my only way out. And I didn't have any book to read.
And the book itself is also structured in such a way that it's not like chronological.
That's right. It's meant to be for people who are ADD like you. You can pull out any
Pages.
chapter, and you can pull out any chapter. I didn't need it to be linear. I wanted it to be like a rhizome. You can pretty much read chapter 5 and 6, and then 12 and 3, and rip out chapter 5 if you didn't like it. You know, I actually even told my publisher, I said, hey, you know, for the chapters that were very controversial, do you want to put perforation so people could just rip it out and toss it, right? Or the censors could rip it out and toss it.
I don't think they would.
Yeah, you know, but
Those are the best chapters.
Yes, but I got censored, so I think 2 chapters were taken out.
Oh right, because I only know that 1 chapter was taken out.
I think 2 chapters, because one chapter was when I actually worked with one of your mega churches in town. That was swiftly taken out. And then and the other was when I was very politically charged, and I felt like in order to make change, because back then again there's no social media, right?
Yes.
So in order to make change, I had to be in a place which allowed me to make change, which meant I had to be either the women's wing or the PAP, because they were the ruling party, and because back then you didn't realize that the Workers' Party was even a capable functioning body. Why? Because the media always just painted them as being completely ridiculous.
Right.
But now with social media, you actually realize they are very capable, they're very eloquent, they're so politically charged, they're very smart.
Yes.
But back in the day, you felt that, oh dear,
You didn't know.
you had no access to all that.
Right. Which is the idea of now, like, you know,
And that's why I
place.
love the social media, because you can't censor reality anymore,
Right.
right? But I lived in a generation where it was very much censored, and you probably didn't know because everything was. So I was asked to join the women's wing and the PAP, but I saw some things that I didn't agree completely with, and
so
that chapter was taken out as well.
So you're at the PAP and in the women's wing because you
And
were.
I was nominated as the first ever arts NMP, right? But because of who I was and how open I was about repealing 377A, I don't think I fit their image of what an NMP should be.
Right. I mean.
Even though it should be nominated by the people, but I don't think I fit that.
Actually, I'm intrigued about this whole process because I'm haven't touched politics, but I don't know how the structure works. So nominated member of parliament is basically the people will sort of like place their votes.
That's right. So you're supposed to be non-partisan. So because I was then nominated by people to be the first ever nominated NMP, I removed myself from the PAP because you have to be non-partisan.
Non-partisan.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because the NMP is basically a non-partisan role. You don't belong to any party.
Right. So you were MP and then you removed so that you can be nominated.
No, I was one of the people that they wanted, that was serving the women's wing and the young PAP.
Yeah.
There were some things that I didn't quite agree with, and then I stepped out.
Yes.
But then it was also that same time where the arts community and people nominated me to be an NMP.
Also, you stepped out and then they nominated you
Yeah,
to be
I mean, you have to be non-partisan anyway. You can't be in a party to be an NMP.
Right. And then after that, you became an NMP? Or?
I didn't. Because I didn't fit.
Right.
Because my point is NMP should be nominated by the people,
Yeah,
by what that is the acronym,
Nominated.
nominated
Right.
member of parliament.
Yeah.
And it should be interest groups, and it should be representative of a cross-section of society or society. But I don't think I fit the bill of...
I think now you do. Will you say so?
I always thought I did. No, having said that, I think it's different. I think you never fit a role. I think you grow into it, you learn, and you got to be really humble about it. I think it's about serving people. It's not about, I want to be in power. It really is about service. It really is about service, leadership, and it's something that I've always advocated. But in hindsight now, I don't think, I was glad for the entire process. I learned a lot more about the process, about myself, about what I stand for and what I don't. I have full respect for it. I'm thankful for my experiences, but I also saw some things that made me a lot more aware of what things should or shouldn't be. But to answer your question,
Yes.
but yes, that chapter was taken out.
We'll talk about it in private. I think that's
Because it's just your second show, right? You do
Yeah.
want to have more shows, right?
We're
Yeah,
gonna
so
do
maybe you should
more.
invite me in your last show.
yeah. Oh, come on. And then, but let's talk about your studying. I think you grew up in a very humble family. I think your brothers both didn't went to school.
They didn't go to school. They just didn't go to university, and they didn't go.
Yes.
I think they did their A levels.
They did that.
But back in the day, then that was the norm.
And then you were the youngest, and you managed to.
They were born in the 60s, right?
Yeah, I
I think the thing is that when people look at you now, they would, I mean, for like a better word, stereotype you as a person who's like, okay, this Loretta might live in a house, driving like really fancy car.
I did drive a fancy car. It's because I work for it and I like my fancy car. But otherwise, no, I know exactly what you mean. I think.
You earn all this like, you know, from scratch. Like,
Well, I think I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a stereotype that if you're successful, you must have had a silver spoon in your mouth.
and you know.
And we didn't. I mean, I think my mom's side came from money, but I think they must have also lost some money. And when she chose to marry my dad was very humble. I mean, I think my dad's family ran like a coffee shop.
Oh, wow.
But I think because our family became successful, I think it's very easy to say, oh, they were lucky or they were born rich. But it's not true at all. For so many years, I remember that because my dad worked as a clerk in overseas unit insurance.
Oh.
And he worked so hard to raise 3 kids. And we live in a 2-room flat in Tanling Hall, I remember.
Yes.
A very humble, I mean, my mom's side had wealthier relatives because I said, my mom's side did come from money. But my mom married my dad that didn't have that much money. And I think it made us really humble because we never felt like we fell short of anything or we wanted anything. I think I still believe till today that love really is the most important thing for any child growing up. I never felt that I ever was lacking in anything. I think my parents, as every other parent, I think my parents fought more than most, but they loved me so much separately. That was also something that could be a topic of conversation if you want to go there, about how I learned to understand.
Yes, and that's only a later part of it.
Yeah, we can understand love between a couple is different from love as a parent. They could be great parents, but they could be horrible as a couple together. And I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, right? But they love me very much. My brothers love me so much. I never felt I ever needed anything, you know?
so you did. You have great love from
I think so.
both brothers and parents.
And I think, but to answer your question about humble beginnings, I think you're trying to raise a question about how we became. Because we're so humble, but I think what our parents did for us was amazing, and that they just said, be a good person. And I remember, I can't even say this without like tearing, but like my dad always like took us to the mosque, to the temples, to the churches, told us to be really respectful.
Yeah.
It's not about being tolerant, it's about being really respectful. You don't tolerate, like you really respect. And so when you have that, when you grow in that kind of environment where you're taught to be so humble and so respectful, and my mom and dad never pressured us like, must go and be doctor, must go and be engineer, must go and make a lot of money. Then, there was none of that. It was just to be a good person.
Yeah, no, but I mean, also your parents, like you say about my parents, that they are quite supportive and open. I mean, I think my parents say the same thing too. As long you're not like doing bad things.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. The 4 things, right? Apparently, and then they're happy with like what you do. But it turns out like I became a beatboxer. Your mom like, oh, beatboxer, great. But so like, how did your brothers both went to A levels and you did too? And how did that translate into like, why did you choose to
Further my studies.
Yeah, instead of like following what your brothers.
I think we need to understand also the cultural context. My brothers lived in an era where you just needed to go out and make money. I mean, they were born in the 60s.
Yeah.
Resources were scarce. All you really wanted to do was go out there, graduate, make money. And that's why in that generation, they were so enterprising and they're so entrepreneurial. They started really young. They went through the school of hard knocks. They're very streetwise. You develop really high EQ because you're not like stuck behind social media or looking at your cell phone or looking at Facebook all day. You had to go out and like make deals with people, talk to people, then and like get your head banged up and your head kind of bruised and your ego bruised. But that was the generation they lived in because they're 50s now. They're probably your parents' age.
That's true.
See?
Very true.
But that's my brothers,
Yes.
right?
You were like, how old apart are you?
I'm 40 now, so I probably like a
7.
No, your math is like quite jalat, right?
I mean, like
so it's
40
like
would be
they're
like-
Early 50 and late 40s, you know.
okay, but that's at least still 10 years. So it's my older brother is 15 years older, 14 years older than me, and my second brother is 11 years older than me. So it's over a decade, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you do see a huge cultural shift. So by the
Yes.
time it was me, it was almost the norm to get a university education.
That's true.
So A, it was a norm. B, I realized I really enjoyed studying. I really did.
You're very good at it.
And I was very good at it.
Yes.
I was one of those kids that I swear to God, okay, like all my friends in CHIJ, they all thought that I was
Bit of
that
fun.
kind of, no, yeah, because I play like mad.
Right.
And then, you know, then when you do one exams, they're like, walao, like, you must be some magatot, you know what I mean? Like behind the back. But I really wasn't. I was just very playful.
Right.
So you're the one people hate.
Usually after exams, they'll hate me. Before exams, everybody loves me because I'm like the school clown, right?
Yes.
And then like, I'll do well. Then it's like,
Yeah.
my gosh, she must be a magatot at home, you know? But I think it's because I genuinely enjoyed it. But having said that, I was really bad at math. So there's some things that I was very extreme. I was really good in some things. I was very good at language and literature, obviously. I was very bad in math.
Yeah.
So I realized I really enjoyed studying. And when I got to university, I realized that
You chose theater.
yeah, which was again quite iconoclastic because I was probably like the second batch
Oh.
of theatre
was it?
students. Yeah,
Oh, was it?
it was not. It was a very rare and daring decision. People would be like, "Huh, what are you going to do as a theatre degree? What is that?"
What
right?
was your
Your decision back then to choose theatre instead of like arts or design or
I can't draw.
or journalism or mass media.
I think interested in theatre because I felt like theatre was a reflection of life, and but you could take life to an extreme and look it through a really colorful lens. Because I felt like, I was interested in journalism too. But I
You're
felt
good
like,
at writing.
Yeah, I was good at writing. I like talking to people.
Yes.
But I felt that journalism imposed on you a sense of having to be objective when we know that there's really no objectivity in reality.
No.
There's always filtered by
But I don't think
someone
you know
else.
that when you were that
I
age.
kind of
Oh,
did.
me too.
And that was why I
Oh, Lord.
preferred theatre because I
Wow.
thought in theatre, you could tell a story by acknowledging and telling a story, and by acknowledging and telling a story, you could actually critique what you want to say better because you're saying that I'm taking a position. I'm not pretending I'm objective.
Yes.
I'm taking a position, and this is my position.
Yeah.
You may disagree with my position, but this is my position.
Yes.
But in journalism, you're really saying this is objectivity. This is CNN, right?
And
it's-
do you say it as like what you think back then, or this is how you see right now?
I think there was a sense of that. I was always a child that was very aware of myself. I think like
Wow.
painfully aware.
Wow.
I may not be as eloquent as I am now. In fact, I
Yes.
think I was probably more eloquent then because now
Really?
I'm losing my memory and I forget words.
No.
Yeah, really, really. But I really do. That's why I brought all these little books
Yes, yes,
to
yes.
show you because
Yeah,
I'll
I see,
forget.
sure.
I also wanted to read theatre,
Yeah.
but I also read English literature
Mm.
and language, and I also did Japanese studies and American studies. But I think I was also, in hindsight, influenced by Edmund because by the time he's already married to my
Yes.
sister-in-law, Xiang Yuan.
Yes. Okay.
So at a very young age, I felt that theatre was in my family. Why?
Yeah.
Because I would be the one reading the scripts with my brother.
That's true.
I couldn't read in Mandarin, but he would bounce it off me, and I'll like, I was not very good in reading the exact Mandarin words, but I got the feeling, like,
Right.
你说真的吗? Like maybe the word was jialat, but like I get the emotion.
Oh wow.
So I may like 读一个字跳一个字, but like I was
Right.
feeding my brother the emotion, you know?
Oh yes.
So we would actually rehearse.
And that's really
obviously,
like you really like practicing director back when you're so young.
I was. So obviously when it was an English script, it was like, oh, this is easy, right? But I enjoyed doing that.
Oh, wow.
And I think also when you have a precedent set in your family,
Yeah.
I didn't think that it was impossible. I think back then people still felt that being a theater or going to being an artist was like, huh, are you crazy? Are you gonna make any money? But it didn't bother me. It didn't come into the equation at all. I just needed to do what I loved.
And how do you finance university?
And this is where I think I also want to share with people who want to be inspired that I think if you really want to do something, somehow you would find your way. Like I told you, we didn't come from a lot of money. I didn't even know if we could make it at university, but somehow I had scholarships. I had people that would.
Yes.
I had scholarships that came my way, and
You just apply.
yeah, and also, when you have scholarships that do come your way, you also feel like you don't want to let people down because they believed in you. And all the more you're going to work harder because you feel like you want to be deserving of them having faith in you. And it becomes like a virtuous cycle. When someone puts faith in you, you want to
Do
repay
more
back the faith and
yes.
pay it forward. And so when I got a scholarship, my first scholarship was actually from my uncle. Then he was a chairman of Shangri-La.
Okay.
And so he gave me the scholarship. So all the more I felt like I needed to work harder. And then eventually, because I did work hard, I got a scholarship from the NAC, the National Arts Council, and then I got a scholarship from the university itself, which is the Royal Holloway University of London, which
But
is
that's
then
later on
which
for
was then
your
which was then the
masters,
top
yes.
college in theatre in London
Yes.
in the world.
Yeah.
So I got a scholarship from them. And again, because you get a scholarship, you're going to be like, oh, I want to work even harder. And then I got a scholarship from UCLA.
I think the thing is that when you know you could get a scholarship, you know that options sort of exist in your world.
And to be fair, at the start, I didn't know. I really didn't know. But that
Your uncle is the one that gave you the idea of scholarship, or did you ask?
no, I
How was it?
didn't.
How was
I
this?
didn't. I think now that I'm older and I have given scholarships, like in fact I give a scholarship to the Raffles Design Institute.
Oh wow.
I realized that when you're in a position to give,
Yes.
it really is a privilege and a joy to be able to give. But on the receiving
Sure.
end as well, the recipient must also allow someone who's in a position to give. Because sometimes we're like, I don't want, I'm so proud, I refuse to take any help, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I realize that it's a give and take, because if someone wants to offer their help, I think we should sometimes be gracious and say, we accept
Yes.
their help as well. And when we can repay it by
Paying forward.
tenfold, because we not only do we practice gratitude, we pay it forward.
Yes.
And I realized that really is really important, and that I think is one of the anchors of my life as well, that I allow people to do kindness to me, and I pay it forward. Because you know, when you're younger, you're like, I got to prove it to myself, man. I do it all by myself. I did that in my 20s. I did that because I'm as you can tell, I'm a tough girl. I did that. I was like, no, I'm going to do it all by myself. And then you realize, and I still do that.
You got a scholarship, but you still do it.
Absolutely.
In other parts of your
Absolutely.
life, correct.
Absolutely. I mean, not just scholarships anymore, but in my life, you know, like yeah.
And coming back to the give and take, I mean, to me, it's also a very new concept. I mean, I always knew it exists, but to the extent of how you describe it, right? Because, you know, like, now you're in a position of having this knowledge to pass on to others. But it's just like, you know, when I came back from traveling for a year trip, backpacking, and then you have all these friends like, hey, you know, like, tell me about it, like, I want to do it, and you're really excited. You're like, hey, you know, this is how I did it, and you like write down like the exact expenses and all, and then 3 months later, they still come back to you with the same old problem that they are like facing.
And this is where I say that when you make a choice, you do need to know that you do give up some things. Like, you gave up some things by going on your backpacking. I gave up some things. I gave up job security, having a great pay package, or having the financial security, knowing that, okay, by 28, I'm going to be able to buy my, like, you know, 3-room HDB, then I get a fiance, then we quickly go and chop the HDB, then, you know, we go and quickly like buy one Toyota, then we have like 2 kids, then we, you know, get a baby bonus.
And
like, you give up all that
no offense,
because
though, if
because
other
yeah,
people
and absolutely, if they want to do
Yes.
that, but you need to know that that's absolutely what you want. Don't do it just because you think that everyone's doing it and so I need to do it. For me, I never saw it as a sacrifice, because I wouldn't want it any other way. I was fiercely independent. I wanted my independence so much more than anything else in the world. I didn't want to be beholden to anybody or anything. And so I knew that I had to be an entrepreneur. I knew that I could only work for myself, because I couldn't like go to work every day from 9 to 5. I think I'm killing all my future employment here. But I figured that I really want to be an entrepreneur, because that way I could maintain my independence.
Yes. And coming back to the give and take, I mean,
I've always been an entrepreneur.
I just want to get your advice on this also, like, how do you choose like when to give? I think more the question of, so now I'm fine taking, right? But the question is like, how do you actually choose who and when you should give, and in terms of advice, in terms of maybe time or money or emotion?
I think it's all different. I think I'm one of those people that people just gravitate to, and they like will just pour their whole life stories to me. So I do find myself being like a life coach, a personal coach to so many people. In a way, I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why I never felt an intense need to have children, because I feel like so many people are my kids, you know. And I've also been a professor, so I have so many like younger students. Like a lot of your crew are. A lot of them are like they're like a lot of them are like my mentees. And I think when people ask, I will share. And some don't look like they're open, but then if you do approach them and they give you signs like they're open, and then I will talk to them, not preachy, not like evangelizing, but like to share. for some that I give scholarships because I think that the school will have some system of rigor to know how to filter and choose, because they would
regulate.
hopefully be able to track the students' progress.
Right.
And because I've been a recipient, I feel I do need to give back,
Yes.
right? But in terms of help, I help all the time, unconditionally. And it's really strange because it comes back in like karma is really a boomerang. Like, you will not see how your kindness today may not manifest in 2 hours or 2 years, but it could be like 5 years later or 20 years later. I mean, I've been, okay, so like just say today alone,
Yeah.
right? Let's just give today as an example.
Yeah.
I am supposed to be in Bhutan on Sunday.
Yes.
But I didn't get my visa because the Bhutanese are so chummy with me. They took too long to process my visa, and then it didn't get processed. Right? They're like, oh, the Bhutanese is coming, so why bother?
Yeah,
and then I was like, I have no visa. And I could always call a favor. I just call someone from the immigration. I don't know if this is considered corruption or whatever, or nepotism, but it's not in our country. So they helped me to work my visa out. Right? And then another scenario, because now I can't get a flight because I've missed. Okay, so then I'm supposed to fly,
Sunday.
but then I can't fly because I don't have my passport.
Yes.
Because the U.S. immigration had messed up my passport.
Correct.
So now I'm late in getting my passport.
Yes.
And I now need to change my flight because I will miss my flight.
Yes.
And because I've been friends with the airline owner and I've supported him in his work, he said, I'm going to change it for you, I'm going to find it for you. And it turns out that it was my nephew, so we managed to swap our flights. But that's not the point. And because my whole schedule is now messed up, I actually literally just got a text from him to say that he's going to pay for my accommodation to just make my whole trip smoother. Like, he literally just texted me, like, your whole journey, like, you're going to stay in this hotel, we're going to put you up, the whole expense is on us. And this really is karma. This is just today alone. I can't even begin to tell you, but I also think you must see it. If you don't see it, like, okay.
You gotta believe.
Like just now, for example, there were lots of people outside your place, and they were doing construction.
Yeah.
And now that we're having an interview, they've stopped. It's because we've sent out that positive energy. We want to be friends with them, and it's going to be they're going to be quiet. And that's how my life has been. If I manifest it and I put it out there, you will see it happen. Like,
and
it's
for sure.
I'm not being like I'm not a religious person, okay?
No.
I'm just saying it really is about being a good person, going out there, telling them, hey, we're going to have an interview, and they're cooperating. But I choose to see it as it's karma because we did something good for them. They're doing something good for us.
Yeah.
And it's all the time. And the more you see it, the more you're going to keep seeing it. And the more you're going to keep wanting to do good things.
No, for sure I believe in it as much as you do. I think my question also stemmed from a place whereby, what if you have time is only the fungible thing, right? And you only have a limited amount of time. So now you need to choose either or. So then, do you have a process of making the decision, or you still help either way?
No, for me it's all about, because of a limited time on earth, we're very mortal. I could walk out right now and I could trip, and that's it.
Let's put the time in,
Right? Like right now, all these paint cans could fall on my head, and that's it.
Oh, no, please don't.
Right? And I think when you have that sort of embrace of mortality, you recognize that you have very limited time here on earth. So why make these difficult choices? When do I want to be good? So just be good all the time. Are there people that have taken advantage of me? Yes. As I've written in my book, I've been cheated of $1.2 million. Yes. But do I learn from that? Yes, I do. Do I also get a lot of kindness from people who in turn believe in me? Yes, I do. So I think if you always do things thinking that, oh shit lah, then someone's going to take advantage of me, then how then I'm going to be very calculative. I think I'm not here to preach. I think everybody has their own philosophy. I think that being calculated and is also a way of living. I just don't choose to do it that way.
And then you know me, I'm the same as you.
Yeah.
But it's just for me at least. I mean, let's not talk about this. Let's just end it there. But then it's just that when you help people and you see people still stuck in the same situation, and you're just like, I told you, and then you didn't make anything. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay, no, but back to your point. I think that the whole point is when the student is ready, the teacher will come. So there's some friends who are just asking you, but they're just asking for the sake of asking you, but they're not really putting the effort. So,
Right.
and eventually they'll have to realize that, okay, because you could go and backpack, you gave up some job security, you gave up X number of months of your life where you could, be potentially working and getting more money. There'll always be people who say, oh, but you're lucky, you're lucky,
I think
you're
you
lucky.
put it in a very wise way of saying, because for me, I would be like, you can do it, just quit your job and do this, this, and this is the action steps to do it.
Right.
But you sort of see it as a like,
There's an
look,
opportunity for us.
that this is an opportunity to us. Like, do you want to give that up? Yeah, I think that's more.
And there's very fundamental in living a very blissful life is that you take responsibility for all your actions. If I did this today, I choose to have this interview with you. I'm potentially giving up some time with my family, but I feel like it's something I want to do for you, right? But if, for example, if I feel like, no, today was really important, my mom is unwell, for example, I will say, hey, Bryan, I'm sorry, I would love to be featured on your show and to be the next internet superstar, but I can't because my mother is ill. And it's happened to me before. I've had to give up opportunities. I was cast as Hedda Gabler in Shakespeare's Hedda Gabler, and it was Shakespeare's Hedda Gabler, but it was by Shakespeare, a director from the Royal Shakespeare, from the Globe. Right? She was, this is like over 20 years ago, so my memory's fuzzy. But I remember this director came from the Globe, and she was the director of Hedda Gabler, and I was chosen to be Hedda Gabler, and I had to give it up because I remember my professor talking to me and saying, do you want your PhD or do you want to be Hedda Gabler? We're giving you a $250,000 scholarship.
And people are backing you up.
That's right. And at that point in time, much as, I want to be Hedda Gabler, but then I could be like in the Globe, I'll be so famous.
London, right? Like
Yeah, right? No, by this time I was in UCLA.
Also, you already got the...
I already got my scholarship,
Okay.
right? And I was like, oh my God, but I could be, the next big star, right? But I realized that, hey, there were some people who put their life on the line and say, I'm going to bet on this girl, give her $250,000 to study, which meant I deprive other people of the chance to do that. It wasn't about me. It was about me thinking like, oh my God, there must have been 1,000 other people that applied. And if I took on that role, I'm disappointing these 1,000 people who didn't.
I don't think that's like, you put it in such a way that I don't think people...
They don't think that. They just think, I have to give up my superstardom for this. Yeah.
Exactly, right.
I just lost my train of thought there.
You make me lose my train of thought all the time because you're so ADD.
So school, Royal Holloway, and then to UCLA. So before we get into that, okay, I'm just going to make you lose your thought again, sorry. Sure. I just remember I want to ask you, which is that your first country that you went overseas?
To live overseas, yes. I mean, obviously, I went to Australia, then go to like, Malacca, then like Malaysia, Thailand, Hong Kong. But yes, to live for an extended period of time was London first, and then California, Yeah,
how was that? Because, like as compared, I mean, I think London is it's not as, forefront in terms of like accepting Asians as California.
For theater, it'd be the place to be.
Are you the only Asian people, like Asian person in the whole class?
I was, maybe back then I was one of two. There was me and a Japanese girl.
Okay.
There were two of us.
And you enjoyed it?
Oh my gosh, yeah, I loved it. I loved it. I don't think we recognize the rigor of the Singaporean education system until you go overseas. I was acing every exam.
All right.
And I was like, what? I was the top student again? Jeez.
But you even beat the Japanese girl.
Unfortunately, yes, because she had a language issue. She's a very good student, but the language issue was tough, yeah. But she married an English man though, so.
Oh, okay.
So let's move on to UCLA. How do you enjoy UCLA?
I had an amazing time. I think it was a very much my awakening happened around then.
And this is a perfect segue to the juice of it that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Do you found your love?
Yeah, my first love, I was 24 and I fell in love with this woman that I met in Davis. Yes. And we dated, but she was seeing someone else then. So, one of those things. So on the day that, I think it's all in a book, but anyway, I'll just summarize it. On the day that she told her then girlfriend that she was going to, be honest and live her life authentically and break up with her to be with me, that her girlfriend kills herself, and 100 days later my girlfriend kills herself in the exact same way. So in a span of 100 days, I witnessed 2 suicides, and it changed my life.
I mean, you were in a very dark place then, and the question is also, how did you got out from this place versus the other, which we don't want to be there. It's with cold and despair, and you like come out as a as a sinister and yeah. What did you hold on to, or if there's people who are listening to this?
I did. I think it's very important to hold on to many things, and it's so bizarre the things you hold on to when you're deepest, darkest despair. One of the thoughts that came to mind was my niece. She was just born, and actually I wrote about it too in the book. She was just born that very year.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, and I was reading books, and that's the other thing that kept me sane. I read a lot of books. Remember, we had no Facebook and social media, so you read, right? So I read a lot of books, and I realized that when there is a suicide in the family, you leave a legacy in the family. And once there's that legacy, there's almost like a psychological imprint in your family. So people will think that, oh, okay, if my aunt committed suicide, I would take the same route. And then, and I didn't want to leave that legacy because she was just born that year.
Yes.
And I remember thinking to myself, again, it's that other first concept that I didn't want this child to grow up thinking she had an aunt that committed suicide and have her think that it's going to be a viable way out. I have, it's one of the hardest things to do. I think it's to take your own life, you have to be in a really, really dark space and to make such a swift and decisive decision. I don't want my niece to ever think that I did it in a rash spur of the moment, and so at that moment when she was ever feeling down, that she would just jump into that moment and just make that decision.
Yes.
Because I wanted to prove to her that life really is worth living for, and I think I did. We're so close now. She read the book, now she's 16. And I think I tell a lot of people that when you go through something so deep and dark, whether it's a suicide or any kind of loss, a loss in a family, a breakup, a divorce, a parent dies, you're in a very dark place, but then you need to trust that it really gets better. Does it take a lot of effort? It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot more effort to be positive than to be negative, because you just want to wallow and wallow in your pain. But you do need to give your space to do that as well and mourn. But you also do need to realize that you must put that effort to get out of that space. And I did many things. I read a lot of books, which gave me a lot more perspective that, hey, I'm not the only one, right? The people that go through worse things. I had a presence of mind to check myself in a hospital, which is also what I wrote about, because again, Asian people never go into a hospital for a mental disease or depression. It's such a taboo. And I wanted to write about it, right? Because then I had a student that was depressed, and he wanted to go and to seek help,
and you just
but
need
his parents refused to allow him. His teachers refused to allow him because they felt that they would be shaming him and the community and the family. But he needed help. I think if we just saw depression as it's like having cancer of the mind, you need to heal your mind, because when you have cancer, everyone's very sympathetic. But when you have depression, people almost feel like, oh, you're a loser. Okay, you just buck up, like, come on, step out of it. But it's not, but I'm talking about clinical depression. I'm not just talking about, oh, today I feel fat. Not that kind of depression. I mean, that's not really depression. But
to read a lot.
I read a lot, and I checked myself in a hospital because I felt that I needed professional help.
Correct.
And it was always, I think, was one of the sanest things I did. So clearly, I was still on the right track. I did very sane things. I took medication just to get me to sleep, and because I needed to rest. And I had really good doctors that literally told me, Loretta, you will be fine. And I always asked them, how do you know I'll be fine? And they said, you will be. And I wanted so hard to believe then, but I couldn't, right? But I said that, okay, I want to. And I told myself I want to believe them. Because you can't change what you feel, but you can change what you think. You feel depressed, but you can think, okay, I know I'm depressed, but I want to feel, I want to be positive about it, right? And then the other thing that I did too was I talked to a lot of people around me, and there are a lot of people that were going through a lot worse times than me. I mean, there was a girl. There was a girl that was there was a girl that was raped by her parent. There was a lady that was clinically bipolar and schizophrenic, and I realized that a lot more people that were going through really tough circumstances, and they had clinical issues. But I just went through a difficult time, and I have every responsibility to get better, because a lot of them don't have the chance to get better.
I had the same situation happen, not to me, but to someone else that I deeply love. And I was in a situation where she said the only thing I can feel was when I cut myself. And I was so stupid, and I actually like bring her a knife, you know? Well, the parents are confiscating everything. So I guess like maybe the better thing to do is to check her in. So as an outsider, to help a person who is feeling depressed, what is there anything that you recommend?
I think yes. I think you can get them to read my book. But no, I think you. One of the other things that I did, which I really advocate, is to try to. I mean, if you're really down, please don't go and check yourself into like New York or Tokyo, because you probably feel like, for me, I was 24. I felt like, okay, I had like such little savings. If I took myself to London or Tokyo or New York, I'll feel so broke, then I'll feel even worse. So it's really a financial concern. But you know, I went to Cambodia and Vietnam, and one of the things that I always remember was that I volunteered in a sex traffic workers camp with small children that were trafficked, and they're from Cambodia. And I remember, asking them, and I went on my own, right? And I remember asking these kids, they're between 8 to 15 years old, they're all sex traffic workers, and I asked them, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they say, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I'll be a teacher, I'll be a nurse. And I'll say, oh, why do you want to do that? And the kids will say, oh, because we want to help other people. And that really, I always say this story because it really humbled me and it put me in my place, because here I was at 24 thinking my world had come crashing down. I'm searching the world, to salvage my soul. And here are these kids. They will never have the opportunity to even travel out of Cambodia. They've already been raped, and this is the life that they're
so
living, and they want to help other people. And it made me feel like if they can feel that way, I have an even greater responsibility to make the right choices, because happiness and freedom, we like to think that it's a right, but it really is a luxury. A lot of them will never be born in a circumstance where they ever have the right to choose. They just don't. For every Malala there is in the world, there's so many other women or small boys or men and women, people that never have the luxury of choice. And so if we have the luxury of choice, I think we have the responsibility to choose wisely, not just for ourselves, but for the people in the world that don't have the luxury of choice to ever be able to be in a position where they can choose.
After studying in UCLA, you moved, so you went to Cambodia, Vietnam to help the girls, and then you came back to teach in SP. You come back to SP.
Remind me what happened.
Yes, you were a great teacher. Everybody loved you, and then someone came called Mike in the story, and he sexually harassed you, big time. And you, on top of that, you have this director, which is your in charge, saying that, oh, so you're a lesbian, or how can he sexually?
Exactly, I found that so ironic. It's like, here I was saying that I had so much fear already going to tell my boss that I was being sexually harassed at work. I think I understand how a lot of women or men who've been sexually harassed, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to walk up to say, I'm being sexually harassed. And instead of commiserating with me, she made me into a victim twice by saying that, A, how could he possibly sexually harass you when you are a lesbian? And it was really shocking in an educational institution. Like, actually, if you want to be very logical, lesbians need even more protection because we have no men around us, right? So I found it appalling that this was our educators in Singapore. I couldn't continue.
And you call it quits right after.
I didn't believe in it anymore. I mean, there were a lot more things, obviously. I wasn't that impetuous, but that was one of the core of it. The fact that we had educators that were making such misinformed judgments.
Yeah, and would I say, like, after the SP incident, when you quit, and was that zebra crossing already, or that was like when you were doing productions?
When I was 33. So by that time, after I left, I realized that what I really enjoyed was creating. And so my second brother actually runs a creative agency, and he's had it for about 25 years. And at his peak, we had like about 70 staff. So I was running about like 70 staff, and we had 3 offices in Singapore, and Hong Kong, and in Thailand. So I was helping him with the business as a creative director. I was directing like campaigns for like Samsung, for Nikon, for Adidas. But I was also, as like, you know, you steal from Peter to pay Paul. It's like I was doing all these fancy campaigns that paid me good money, and then I would go and run off to do theatre. Right, so the theater was like my passion, my vice. So I was taking from like my below the line marketing, advertising jobs to go finance my theater career.
In itself, I mean, like back then was still not like independent, like financially independent.
Yeah,
like,
it wasn't. I mean, I could tell you really honestly, the first project that I did as a theater actor, guess how much I got? 3 months rehearsal for 2-week shows. $80. Okay, so I got $80. Yeah. So that was just like in 1998, you know. So that was really like the rates we're looking at. Then like maybe you, you know, then maybe you graduate to getting $250 and then $500. Right. And it still really wasn't enough to sustain you.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get to a point where I got like a 4-figure paycheck, $1,000. Right. So it really took a while, you know, to I think where we are today. I think it's great that actors now could actually make a living out of acting.
Yes.
They still probably have to sideline and do other jobs, but back then it was definitely a lot tougher.
And you went from acting to directing and creating your own shows, which is
The reason
great.
why I went from acting to directing was a very simple fact that I had really bad knees. I tore my knee by the time I was 24. I was diagnosed with osteoarthritis by the time I was 24. So as a result, I knew that I couldn't rely on my body. As an actor, you had to be in full control of your body, and I knew that my knees were deteriorating. Like now, I've already had 7 surgeries to my knees. So I knew that I needed to find an alternative, and I realized I really enjoyed directing because it was like being a teacher, because you mentored all these people, all the actors, all the designers, all the crew. They were like all my family. I like playing like Mama Hand, you know. It allowed me to be creative. You could create an alternate universe, and it was watching like an entire corporate culture being formed overnight because you're the CEO, which was the director, and then you had your different departments. You had your costume designers, your actors, you had your production people, your sound people. You needed to think in this very interdisciplinary way, this very macro view of handling and managing different egos and different talents, different scripts, the actors, and I really loved that challenge. I loved it, and I realized that I naturally really enjoy directing.
Yes, and in fact, you did some really good shows in 251. Very, very controversial. I'm not sure at that point in time.
It was very
still
controversial.
Is, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was.
And he went on to even more crazier stuff. Vagina monologues.
Yes.
Even I say when I say it out, I feel controversial.
You feel like you blush. But I have a funny story about that. The censors wanted to censor my play, and then when they called me and they said, "Well, Loretta, we've got a problem with the title of your play," and I said, "Why? Is it the word the or monologue?" And I wanted them to say it. They're like, "Oh, it's the middle word." I said, "Oh, what is it? What is it?" You know, I was so terrible to these, you know, people, and I was being funny. And they said, "Oh, can you change the title?" Then I said, "Oh, but it's just a body part. It could be the ear monologues and the nose monologues." You know, that was funny.
And did that like got printed and?
Yes, and I have a funny story about the poster. So basically, the board of censors, have all due respect to them, but they're quite funny people. You have a sense of humor about them. So what happened was that I had a poster, and I had my model. Like have her leg spread eagle, so she had a V, right? And then she put her legs down, so it was an M. And I got her to wear a thong, right? And basically, I got her to put her finger over her thong out of modesty, because there's like a crew videoing her and taking photos. So out of modesty, I said, put your hand there to cover, you know, your vital organs. But then, like, just to be funny, I thought, I'm just going to send this photo as is without, you know, editing it. I knew they would censor it. But I thought they would censor it because they would think that, oh my God, Loretta, it's so in your face, it's vulgar. Right? I thought that's why they would censor me. But basically, when they called me, they said, Loretta, can you change your poster? And I said, why? I wanted them right, like, right? Sure, it's so vulgar. But I was already going to be, you know, cheeky, and I was ready to change. And then they said, oh, it's because the girl looked as if she was masturbating. It didn't even cross my mind. Like, they were more advanced than me. Like, wow, like for me, it was just modesty, land. Like, poor thing, the girl must cover, right? Because got like photographer there. And like, they're like, wow, got masturbating all. This is like, it was funny that, the fact that the vagina was, on display, it was okay, but the fact that the woman looked as if she was pleasuring herself
Yeah.
is not okay.
So vagina, the word is printed and
yes,
bow
it
and.
was like V and it was okay.
So what did it turn into the poster in the
I
end?
don't know if it's in there, but it was VM. But then what I did was I put lots of flowers because I wanted it to be like this like lush flowering Garden
Yes.
of Eden. So I put lots of flowers and it was really pop and like it was a beautiful poster.
And shortly after you started a company, Zebra Crossing.
Yeah.
And that turned into the next crisis.
Yeah, that was my big
1.2
financial.
million.
Yeah, that was my big financial meltdown. Basically, I went on a partnership with friends, and this is where also I give case studies, as a leadership trainer now. It's always very easy to go into partnership with friends thinking that you want to split everything equal. But now in hindsight, again, how people want to run their businesses is really up to them. One of the advice that I'll give is to always have a major shareholder, even if it's just 1% more. Because one of the problems we ran into was the fact that even though I was a financier, I was financing the company together with my brother as a silent partner, the two of us were financing it
Yes, and
monetarily.
The rest were
The rest were not financing, but they all had equal shares. So I think that made it tough. I had one other partner that also put in money, but the bulk was my brother and I, and then one other person that put in money, and then there was another shareholder, but we all split equally. So you can imagine that when it came to crunch time, it was tough because the people that were losing money were saying, we need to put a stop to this.
Correct.
But then people who don't have that pinch would say, no, let's continue.
Yeah,
but they had as
nothing
equal.
what, nothing what.
But you see, then I didn't realize. Then I wanted to be democratic. I thought
Yes.
it was fair because you're young, right?
Yeah.
Like it's fair. We have to be very. I mean, I still think it's about being fair. But if you put in more money, you should have more shares. I didn't think about
So
that.
naturally
I put in
fair,
more
right?
money, then I had equal shares.
I think it was just because you're also a very giving
I was
person.
very giving. So I put in the most money, but then I had the same shares as everyone. I was like 25. It was 25 a piece, but I put in the most money, followed by then my brother, and then followed by the other partner, and then there's a person that didn't need to put in money.
So, like,
Obviously, it was.
in the end, like,
What was the ordeal and like what the final decision was? You left, right?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things was recognizing that because I was the face of the company, and people don't work for companies. People work for people.
yeah,
My staff and my crew and my actors and everybody at work worked because they believed in my vision.
yes,
I did not ever touch the money. I just gave the money. I never signed a check. I was not a signatory of my own company at all because
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't good with money. I just wanted to be a creator.
yeah,
And I didn't see to the finances at all. There were quite a few shenanigans that were happening with the accounts
Yes.
that went completely unnoticed by me. But the key thing, and like I said, is to take responsibility for the fact that even my ignorance, I'm culpable for my own ignorance. I mean, I can be angry and say, oh my God, somebody cheated my money and cheated me at
It's a
1.2
lot of
million.
money.
Yeah. In cash, it was probably like my brother and I was probably over, in cash, it was like over $250,000, yes, for sure. And a lot of other things as well, yes. A lot of money. But my point is, I would still be very bitter today if I feel like, oh, I was cheated,
Yeah.
Yes, there were shenanigans happening,
yeah,
but I think if we take a step back to say that I also took responsibility for the fact that I didn't want to find out, hey, what's happening, Bryan? How much is this? And how come you never show me the receipt? I mean, if I was really as responsible, fiscally responsible, I should have said, hey, I need to know as well. I didn't. I had full trust. I just took a complete backseat. So, in many ways, once you take responsibility for, yes, I was super kind. Remember I told you how you could be really kind and you could be
Yes, it's
abused
one
for
of
it?
the
This is one of those situations. I was completely trusting,
Yes.
didn't look at the accounts, didn't sign a check.
yeah,
I was working to pay for my company because it was my passion. Would I change a thing that I did? No, because like I said, you take responsibility for your actions and you make calculated risks
Yes.
and you take responsibility for every choice you make, good or bad,
Yeah.
because you made a choice. I chose to do this. In many ways, I gave my partners the ability to walk away
Yes.
with what they have because I didn't keep an eye on it. I can choose to see it another way and say, oh my God, they're horrible. Those beeps, stole my money. But I don't live like that. I don't think it's.
Yeah, and to be
I took
honest,
responsibility
I
for
mean,
it. That I chose to be ignorant.
I think one of the successful traits to our successful people is that they always take responsibility with their mistakes.
That's
and
right.
they learn from it.
That's
and it's
right.
they never blame others,
No.
right? And I think you did the same too. So let us wrap up over here. And with some quick questions for you.
Yep.
So advice for your, let's say, 24-year-old?
And advice for 24-year-old?
Your 24-year-old self?
My 24-year-old self?
And your, let's just place another date at maybe 34. So 24 and 34.
My 24-year-old self, you are thinner than you think you are. Your life is going to be way better than you think it's going to be. All the magic and love and things that you believe in is real. Even when there are times when you don't think it's real. For my 34-year-old self, you're thinner than you think you are.
Okay.
Because now I'm 40 and I put on 8 kilos, but I'm fine. You may think that you want the whole world to love you, but you begin to realize that there are other things that are more important, like your family, your health, and that it's not important to have the world to love you, but it's important for you to love yourself and just always be loving. And if people if people gravitate towards you, great. Otherwise, you don't have to bend over backwards, however you want to take it, and to make the world love you.
Great advice. Habits and routines that you find important?
Every morning I actually wake up 2 hours before my first appointment of the day. So if let's say you're going to meet me at 5 a.m., I have to be up at 3 a.m.
Okay.
If you met me at 3 a.m., I have to be up at 1 a.m. Because I feel like that those 2 hours to myself is me time. Because the minute I'm out and about in the world, you're giving energy. I'm responding to you. You're asking me a question, I'm responding to you, responding to the crew, I'm responding to people, I'm responding to stimuli around me. So 2 hours to myself is like my meditation time, my me time. The first thing I do when I wake up is I read a positive book. I don't want to read like bad news, someone killing somebody or somebody stealing from somebody. I always read very positive books because I want to start my day right with positive thoughts. I mean, the day will have bad news already throughout. I don't need to start it with. So I start those 2 hours with always a positive book that's uplifting. And I have my coffee, and then I have to go to the bathroom.
If you have a bus poster anywhere, what's it gonna say?
If it's a bus poster or MRT poster or whatever, I will say there isn't a way to happiness, but happiness is the way. Yeah.
There isn't a way to happiness, but happiness is the way.
Yeah, that's right.
It's almost like the journey is the journey.
You choose to be happy. You don't get to happy. You make a decision to be, and you are.
Got it.
Yeah. Don't think that you'll get there. You just be there. You're happy.
When you think of the word successful, who's the first person that came to mind? And
I think people who are authentic. I think people who define their life in their way and who exactly as they want it. There's so much courage that it's needed to be authentic. There's so many authentic people that I've met, and some of them are not known people, but they live authentically. They can live simply, but they live authentically. Like my husband is the most authentic person I know.
Yes.
My parents, my siblings. I think people who dare to live authentically
To themselves.
because there are people that I know out to the world who are very successful, but they can't even be truthful to themselves.
Yeah.
So I think of successful. I think of being at peace with yourself, and because you live with yourself every day. Who else are you going to live with every single day of the rest of your life? So you better be successful at living with yourself.
what are some of the most common misconceptions about you
Right. So
or your work?
Wow, how much time have we got?
Top three.
That I'm very controversial just for the sake of being controversial. I don't think so. I think that there's a lot of thought because people forget that anything very dramatic, but they forget that I'm a trained academic, which means I'm incredibly logical. But I think the packaging is something that I enjoy, being very theatrical and walking in being very theatrical. But I'm at heart I can live in the Himalayas on my own.
Yeah.
Right. So I can be incredibly quiet. I can go for days and days without talking to people. But when I choose to be controversial, it's not for the sake of being controversial. It's because you want to engage people to provoke thought. Because I always think that in order to get people to think, you need to provoke them to think. You can tell them what to think. I want you to think this way. So I always create plays and productions and campaigns that force you to think why am I segregating homosexuals? Why am I segregating Muslims? Why am I segregating old people?
Yeah.
You know, I try to always encourage diversity, embrace all differences, and respect all differences. Again, it goes back to how I was raised by my dad. That in all my, it's not about telling you don't do this and don't do that, because it's like, don't think of a pink elephant, you are going to do it.
Yeah.
But to make people think and reach your own conclusions at your own time. And I think that's how my art is. I think it's all my productions, or my philosophy, even how I teach in class. It's to provoke people to think and things like that, you know?
Okay, so last question would be books you recommend, and then documentary.
So many books that I would recommend. Like personally, top three. Okay,
Yes.
I really like this book called The Female Brain and The Male Brain. It's written by the same writer. Basically because it gives you a very logical, biological view of why you are the way you are. For more like philosophical books, I like, or you know, spiritual books, I like to read like Osho. I like to read like The Diamond Cutter. I like to read What Makes You Not a Buddhist. I like to read philosophy like Barthes or Foucault. It's hard for me to name top three, but one of the books that I will say if you ever are feeling down and you know you got to read Night Falls Fast, but of course you have to read Woman on Top.
Yes.
And you can read my next book coming up, which is called Driven by Purpose.
Driven by Purpose. And tell us about the next book.
So next book, Driven by Purpose, is a book that I chose to write on my friend Elim Chu, who's an entrepreneur. And she's actually going through her own reincarnation because all of 77th Street is closing. And she's now moving to a new phase of her life where it's her own EC50 project. She turns 50 this year. So she's going through a whole new milestone. And I chose to write about her because I feel that she's iconic of those 50 years as well, like her career. You know, she started 77th Street and now it's come to a complete end. She's reinventing herself now to go into logistics, and also social media. She wants to start an ECTV channel, Elim Chu channel. So basically it's about reinventing as well. So I chose to write about her because I wanted to tease out all these stories to make it again relevant to my readers, that life begins at 50. You can reinvent yourself. But the other thing that I'm also working on is Secrets to Happiness, which is a travel documentary that is going to be aired on an international travel channel.
Yes.
So that really sees me going to different countries, but the first pilot series would be in Bhutan, where I try to find out the secrets to happiness.
So basically, Secrets to Happiness in questioning that in different countries.
That's right. Yeah, but the pilot would be in Bhutan.
A great place to start. Yeah, so tell us, where can people find you and follow your work, follow you?
You can follow me on, I have an Instagram account. I think it's just Dr. Loretta Chen.
Okay.
I have a Facebook, which is Loretta Chen.
Okay.
I have a website, which is Dr. Loretta Chen. So I think it's
We all
quite
link you
easy.
up. We all link
But then I'm not a big social
You will be.
manipulator the
You
way
will
you
be.
are.
You will
So
be.
so you're gonna make me an internet star
Yes,
with
we
this
will, we will.
program.
After the book.
All right, so let's wrap it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for
Thank you.
for being here.
My pleasure.
Yes.
Oh, I have a gift.
Maybe sometimes in Singapore.
See ya.
How are you?
Thank you. Yes, come see me in Honolulu.